Hey, Slater Crusaders. America's the greatest country in the world. Thanks for being here. Hope you had a good weekend. I've been saying that as my intro on every radio hour since I was in college, my college radio station. It's still true. But man, it's getting harder to say. Our war in Afghanistan is over. 20 years. And this is how it ends. These videos here of planes taking off from the Kabul airport, full of people so desperate to get out, they're clinging to the side of it. You can see as the plane rides by here, people clinging to the side of the plane. And then when it takes off, they fall off and die. The comparisons to Vietnam are obvious. And our national security advisor this morning, he said, oh no, there's no comparison. Helicopters, that's how people transport from the embassies. This is totally normal. And to her credit, Savannah Guthrie on NBC News, she said, no, man, it's not the mechanism of travel that matters. It's the scramble. It's the last minute scramble. Don't let them gaslight you, which they're going to try to do here to cover themselves. The Soviets spent 10 years in Afghanistan. Lost. That was till 1989. Only 12 years later, we go in and do the same thing. Stay for 20. 20,000 Americans wounded, 3,500 dead, 4,000 contractors dead, 15,000 more contractors wounded. Not to mention all the other wounds of war, broken families, despair for a lifetime, which affects their kids, it affects generations. 30,000 suicides of veterans since 2001. 30,000 suicides. $2 trillion. And for what? And all of that gone, not only gone in 3 days. This is Biden back on July 8th of 2021, just a month ago. Here's Biden.
The Taliban is not the North Vietnamese army. They're not remotely comparable in terms of capability. There's going to be no circumstance where you see people being lifted off the roof of a embassy of the United States from Afghanistan. It is not at all comparable.
That's exactly what happened. There's so many clips from this press conference. Let's play another one here.
Is a Taliban takeover of Afghanistan now inevitable?
No, it is not. Because you have the Afghan troops have 300,000 well-equipped as any army in the world, and an air force against something like 75,000 Taliban. It is not inevitable.
As if well-equipped is all it takes. A couple days ago, we were told that Kabul may fall, the capital of Afghanistan, may fall in 90 days. 3 days later, the capital was under Taliban control. And worst of all the American equipment, you heard the president say, the Afghan military is well-equipped. All of that American equipment, guns, vehicles, drones, fighter jets, are now in Taliban's hands. Now the Taliban is one of the most well-equipped armies in the world. And they have an $800 million embassy that is now under their control. $800 million embassy. 20 years in Afghanistan, and we gave the Taliban an $800 million embassy for their trouble. And by the speed of their takeover, you'd think we spent the last 20 years training the Taliban fighters, not the Afghan army. Let me say this here about the men who served. Military service is noble. You did your job. You executed it well. You laid down your life for the man next to you. That is noble and good. You did not fail. We did. And our politicians and our experts failed us. The people who had no skin in the game. Again, we got played again. We got played trusting the experts again. Remember, the US government paid for, the taxpayer paid for the longest and most expensive undercover CIA operation in history to arm the Mujahideen in Afghanistan against the Soviets. It's Operation Cyclone. That was 1979 to 89. How much did that CIA effort help fund and create bin Laden and the Taliban? So you think about that, our efforts to try to undermine the Soviets in Afghanistan in the 80s, and what that led to in Afghanistan. Then you look at what we did now and all the weapons they have now, and what war are we going to be fighting in a few years against our own guns again? But now Afghanistan is a Chinese colony, which we'll talk about another day. And could we have ever won? Really? This is from an Afghan person. He says, the root of Afghanistan's misery is ethnicity. We are not one people. We don't like or trust each other. We don't belong under one flag or government. This gives you better understanding than anything you hear from the world's collective experts. We never knew who the enemy was. There was a report a couple years ago that came out about our failures in Afghanistan. That was one of the main things and we'll go over this sometime this week, the generals there admitted we don't know who the enemy is. We don't know what we're doing. We don't know who to fight against. We don't know who the enemy is. There's no way to ever win that. So because of that, I don't blame Biden for leaving necessarily. Right? Now, maybe there's an argument for keeping a footprint in Afghanistan to help us, fight in that part of the world if we need to, or whatever, right? So I don't know. Do we need to leave a little footprint? Do we need to leave completely? Whatever. What we do know is this withdrawal couldn't have been worse or more embarrassing than what it was. But look at the president's show of strength and confidence to the world that the White House sent out yesterday in their statement, just to tell the world that President Biden is watching the conditions here. Look at this picture here. This will inspire confidence. Oh, that's that Taliban. They are shaking in their boots right now. Look at that president is frail and weak and alone. By the way, that picture may not even be from yesterday. If you look above the TV screen, there's time zone clocks. The time zones seem to be wrong. The difference between Moscow and Tehran in that picture is 30 minutes, but because the time zone changes, it's now 90 minutes apart. So we don't even know when that picture was taken. I'll let that sit until we get more details on that. But look how weak that looked. Look how weak that is. Again, I don't necessarily blame him for leaving. I do blame Biden for how bad this retreat was. And so obviously bad. I'll give you an example. This is from the Wall Street Journal. Okay? We built, and tomorrow I'm going to share a story of our arrogance, our hubris in Afghanistan, trying to build the Afghans to be like us. It's not, we went through this ridiculous soybean program to try to get them to grow and eat soybeans. And they don't like soybean. They don't eat soy over there. They don't want soy. They never wanted soy. And we just kept trying to push soy on it. It's like a nice little metaphor for how we've been handling this. But here's a more important example. We built the Afghan military to look just like ours. Our military relies almost entirely on air support. So we built the Afghan military to rely on air support. Well, apparently, we pulled all of our air support, so we left the Afghan military with no way to do anything. We left them with no way to fight. So who knows, even if we did it, would they fight? Are they able to fight? I don't know. But we didn't even give them a chance. Here's the Wall Street Journal. In the wake of President Biden's withdrawal decision, the U.S. pulled its air support, intelligence, and contractors servicing Afghanistan's planes and helicopters. This meant that the Afghan military simply could not operate anymore. Our military leadership, at least we were told, they thought that the Taliban would take, they would maybe never get it back, or 90 days, as we said earlier. 3 days? 3 days to take back a country we spent 20 years securing? You talk to enlisted people, they saw this coming for over a decade. And that's one of the stories of this war, and maybe all modern wars today. It's a war created, extended, and executed by people with degrees from Georgetown and Harvard, fighting a war that's more distant than ever before, a war that's more virtual than ever before. I mean, we literally drop bombs from drones here in America. So we have people, experts with degrees, pushing this war, executing this war, and the cost, as with all wars, falls on kids from Kentucky and Georgia. So why did it fail? Many reasons. One of the biggest, no skin in the game. no skin in the game for the people continuing it. Ever. Also, my frustration isn't just with Biden. I don't want to put it just on him. It's all of them. Lied to again and again. Lied to for the billionth time. Deceived, misled. And it's a range of people. It always is, right? You have well-intentioned clowns with their degrees, right? But they're just wrong. Good intentions, but they're just wrong. They're wrong all the time. Just wrong, and wrong. You keep being wrong. Like Neil Ferguson, the Fauci of England. You look at all of his predictions of every potential pandemic, swine flu, foot and mouth, or mad cow disease. Every single time, he's like, oh, 1 million people are gonna die, and 2 die. For years, he's been wrong. He's always wrong. Same thing with these war guys. They're just wrong all the time. So you're somewhere between just ignorant clowns, just well-meaning, but just wrong, all the way to just greedy, arrogant monsters, and everything in between. And these people who for 20 years, really my entire lifetime, I'm 36, these people have never done so much to discredit themselves and to shame themselves in this country. It's unbelievable. Look at this. Look at where we are right now, okay? This was the U.S. Embassy in Kabul. The U.S. Embassy in Kabul last month, they put this on their Twitter. And you tell me where their priorities are, right? They said, the month of June is recognized as LGBTI Pride Month. The United States respects the dignity and equality of LGBTI people and celebrates their contributions to society. We remain committed to supporting civil rights of minorities, including LGBTI persons. Pride 2021 Pride Month. That was June 2nd. It's 2 months ago. The Twitter account of the Kabul Embassy celebrating Pride Month in Kabul. Pride comes before the fall. Literally. We got so much to do here with this topic. Let me take a break. General Keith Kellogg is going to come up in the third segment today. And we're going to talk all about it all week, of course. What a shame. The whole thing. Coming up next, I want to talk about how the communists here, they want you dumb, sick, and lost. Dumb, sick, and lost. So what do we do to combat that? Well, we got to get smart, healthy, and saved. We'll talk about that coming up next. First, though, the newsletter, friendly reminder to sign up for the Up First newsletter. It's wonderful. I don't know if you sign up for any newsletters. There's some really good ones out there, and this is one of the best. You can sign up for it for free, of course, thefirstTV.com. And when you wake up in the morning, start here with the news that matters. I think of Drudge Report. We used to check Drudge all the time, right? Please, you can't do that anymore. Who do you trust? Who can you trust? Try to trust us. Give it a chance. We'll earn it. TheFirstTV.com. Spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders. So the commies want us dumb, sick, and lost. So we need to take it upon ourselves to do the exact opposite of those things. Let me explain. Let's back it up. There's a book written in 1961. It's called The Rape of the Mind, The Psychology of Thought Control, Menticide, and Brainwashing. Menticide is brainwashing. It's by this guy, Joost Meerloo, some Dutch guy. And it's about thought control in totalitarian states. So how these totalitarian leaders and countries can brainwash people. This guy was a psychiatrist by trade. So I got some quotes here that I think may seem pretty relevant to where we are today. We'll start here. Each wave of terrorizing creates its effects more easily. So when they try to terrorize you, every time they try, it's easier for them to do. After a breathing spell, than the one that preceded it, because people are still disturbed by their previous experience. Morality becomes lower and lower, and the psychological effects of each new propaganda campaign become stronger. It reaches a public already softened up. Remember, COVID, well, I was gonna say COVID started, but it actually started with, don't worry, come on down to Chinatown. Then it worried, and then it was, well, don't worry about it, just wash your hands. And then it was 2 weeks to flatten the curve, right? That's it, just 2 weeks. And then it was a bit more and a bit more and a bit more and a bit more. And now, we seem to have no problem with people like Schwarzenegger saying, screw your freedom. Sorry, what? screw, huh? Right, but you see, it just goes like this. It gets worse and worse and worse. It comes in waves. And we think for a minute it may be over, right? The torment may be over, right? We can finally take our masks off. You know, in England, they called it Freedom Day. They literally called it Freedom Day, the day that the government allowed people to go back outside. They called it Freedom Day. The day the government decided to give you your freedom back, let's make it a holiday, we'll call it Freedom Day. And then they come back a week or so later and they come back even harder. And it comes in increasing waves. And each time the people are softened up more. It's easier, actually, every time they come back and take more control. You think it'd be harder, but it's not. It's easier every time they do it. Quote 2, logic can be met with logic, obviously, but illogic cannot. It confuses those who think straight. The big lie and monotonously repeated nonsense, put your masks on, have more emotional appeal than logic and reason. So while the people are still searching for a reasonable counter-argument to the first lie, the totalitarians can assault them with another. I've always called this the broken synapse effect. So if you're in a group of people and you're debating somebody and this person makes just the most ridiculous comment you've ever heard in your life, it's so stupid, the synapses in your brain can't, don't even, what they said, you don't even know. And because you're stuck, you're like, oh, I don't need, people watching think, because you don't have an immediate response back, they think that was a great argument that person made. They made an argument, you have no rebuttal, therefore they won. And you're like, no, that was just the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I don't even know. And it's because logic can be met with logic, but illogic can't. And the totalitarians use that. I want to play just one example of this. This is some Antifa guy. I guess he's some popular podcaster or something. His name's Vosh. So he's way far on the left. And he's debating a conservative guy here. And imagine you're the conservative here. You can't debate this guy. You can't. And this is a wonderful weapon that the left uses. Here it is.
I have to ask you, why can a person with a penis not be a woman?
Because women don't have penises.
Why not? Can you find me a dictionary definition of woman which includes that?
I would only point to your mom. Did your mom have a penis?
I'm sorry, does every woman have to have a penis? I know women with penises.
No women have ever had a penis, and no mom has ever had a penis. I'm just asking.
My mom's had a lot of penises.
Wait, I know moms with penises. So these are irrational arguments. So let's give it another shot. Can you
it's
explain
irrational to say that a woman can have a penis. I'm only giving you an example of
why?
Because your moms or women have wombs.
Some of them do.
And vaginas. I know this is news. This is what I mean by
you're not even engaging, dude. You're lost.
It's like you, Vash. Between the two of us, you're the crazy person, buddy. You're the one saying that a
You're
woman
coming off
could have a
No, I'm asking you, but you can't answer because you know that you have no arguments here.
What's that guy supposed to do? Right? What do you do with that? Now, the super far left guy, he's right about one thing. He goes on, he says that every major Western medical organization is on board with the belief that a woman can have a penis and a man can give birth. He's right. The top med schools across the country, children's hospitals across the country, the American Medical Association, the American Pediatric Association, they all say that men can get pregnant and men can give birth. What do you do with that? You can't. And that's part of their game. I got one last quote here. He's talking about Pavlov's dogs. We all know Pavlov's dog, right? So the idea that you have a dog, and then every time you ring a bell, you give it a little food, so its mouth salivates. So eventually you can just ring the bell, and the mouth salivates. Right? You can train the dog that way, Pavlov's dog. Pavlov made another significant discovery. The conditioned reflex could be developed more easily in a quiet laboratory. Every trainer of animals knows this from his own experience. Isolation and the patient repetition of stimuli are required to tame wild animals. The totalitarians have followed this rule. They know that they can condition their political victims most quickly if they're kept in isolation. We've never had isolation in the Western world like we've had during COVID with the lockdowns. One cannot overstate the psychological harm of cooping people up in their house for as long as we did in America and around the world. I was talking to someone from Barcelona the other day, and in Barcelona, his sister's apartment is 400 square feet, right? So you're stuck alone. She's alone, 400 square feet for over a year and a half. The effect that has on people, you can't, right? And then even when we're allowed outside, we're kept in isolation behind our mask. And then we're explicitly told by government officials to not engage in conversation with people. That's fight. Remember the Australian woman, the Australian Fauci said, fight the natural human urge to be friendly. Resist that urge to be friendly to your neighbor, she said. So you're stuck at home. If you're allowed outside, you're not allowed to talk to anybody. That social isolation 100% primes you to be controlled and manipulated. It is way easier to manipulate someone when you're isolated. Okay, so you put these three things together, right? You put the fear, you put the illogic, you put the isolation, you put all these things together, and I'm sure a few more too. Why does it matter? Because this is how it's always done. When you put these things together, people get miserable. People get tired, depressed, dependent on the government like never before. I drove by a movie theater the other day. Okay, me, I drove by a movie theater, and I saw some movies out, and I said, "Are we allowed to go to the movies?" I say me because I got freedom, right? And even in my brain, I was like, "Oh, are we allowed to do that?" Have you ever thought such a thing ever in your entire life? Hey, let's go out to eat. Oh, can we? Is the government allow this restaurant to be open? Are we? See how already our brains have changed as we run it through the government permission lens. Right? See how screwed up that is? So we're all these things, hopeless perhaps, vulnerable, and maybe not you. Maybe you're like, Slater, I'm not vulnerable. Enough people are. Ignorant of our history, that's for sure. Ignorant of who we are. And we are ripe for the ruling elite to completely take us over. Why? Because all those people who are desperate, miserable, they just want it to stop. They just want peace. Okay, what do I got to do to make it stop? What do I have to do to go to a restaurant? What is it? I just want to stop with it already. What do I do? What pill do I have to take? Okay, I'll take it. Fine. That's people's reaction eventually, and that's how the government does it. Last quote from this gentleman. Totalitarianism is a man's escape from the fearful realities of life, the fearful realities that the government's created, into the virtual womb of the leaders. Womb meaning it's safe. Man no longer assume responsibility for their own life. There's peace and silence, the peace of utter submission. People just want peace from the noise and the difficulty and the hopelessness of it all. And people will gladly, not you, but most people will gladly take the government's offer to just finally solve all of our problems for us. I see it already with so many people. Like the California Restaurant Association the other day came out and said, okay, yeah, we agree with vaccine passports if it means people can finally eat in restaurants, right? So it's, yeah, I'll do this as long as, please, I'll submit to this as long as you'll please let me do this, government. That's how it always goes. This is Frank Ferretti. He wrote a book called How Fear Works. He said, relieving people of the burden of freedom in order to make them feel safe is a recurring theme in the history of authoritarianism. Guys, do we have that clip from Fauci? Listen to the way Fauci talks to you. It's unbelievable.
We've got to do mitigation, put aside all of these issues of concern about liberties and personal liberties, and realize we have a common enemy, and that common enemy is the virus. And we really have to all pull together to get on top of this. Otherwise, we're going to continue to suffer as we're seeing right now.
Yeah, we were told the same thing about the war on terror 20 years ago. Put aside these liberty stuff. Just put that aside. Put it aside. Listen, we got to go. We got General Keith Kellogg here. Let me tell you this. We are facing a very deep philosophical problem here. There's no easy solution out of this. But I'll let you know. The government wants you dumb, sick, and lost. The communists want you dumb, sick, and lost. So what do? We get smart. Read books. You get healthy. Lift weights. Go for a walk. Go for a run. Get in shape. Lose weight. They want you sick. So get healthy. And go to church. Get saved. Because they want you lost. The left wants you dumb, sick, and lost. So get smart, healthy, and saved. Government's the real virus with their fear, illogic, and isolation. And if you want immunity from their control, you got to get smart, healthy, and saved. General Keith Kellogg next. By the way.
President Biden is intent on avoiding a Saigon moment. That's a reference, of course, to the hasty and humiliating U.S. evacuation from Vietnam. But with this troop surge to airlift Americans out of Afghanistan, aren't we already in the midst of a Saigon moment?
No, we're not. Remember, this is not Saigon. We went to Afghanistan 20 years ago with one mission.
Well, it's obviously exactly like Saigon. I want to go right to, that's, by the way, our Secretary of State, Mr. Blinken. I want to go right to Keith Kellogg, Lieutenant General, U.S. Army, former National Security Advisor to Mike Pence. General, how are you, sir?
Good, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Great to talk to you. I have tons of questions for you. Let's go back to the beginning. 20 years ago. Been doing this for 20 years in Afghanistan. Where, can you pinpoint, obviously there's many moments, can you pinpoint one in particular, one moment when it started to go wrong?
Yeah, it was probably 18 years ago. We went in there, we were righteous when we went in. We went after Al-Qaeda. We went after Osama bin Laden. We decimated Al-Qaeda, we got it, from bin Laden in Pakistan. And colleague Sheikh Mohammed, the brainstorm of 9/11, he's sitting in Guantanamo jail. The problem is, Mike, in my belief, that after we did what we should have done, which was chase them and kill them as appropriate, we should have said, okay, our job is done, and then move away from Afghanistan. In fact, what we started to do was nation building, and it started to go down from there. We started to create something that just in our liking that wasn't going to work in Afghanistan. I mean, Alexander the Great in 327 BC.
Who decided that? Who and I'd love it if we could get to the specific person, but even if you can get to the where, people from this think tank or this school of thought, who decided that we should go down the nation building track ultimately?
Well, I think, I have a real fault with a lot of very senior, now retired and also actual military leaders that were 3 and 4 stars at the time that said, well, we can go into nation building and start working and create this country and turn them into Jeffersonian Democrats. That was never going to work. It's a totally different culture. And somebody just didn't look at history. We hoped that something was going to happen. And hope is not a good course of action. So I think if you go back and look at the whole group of leaders that we had at the time, and unfortunately we created that. It was self-creating where it became habit and everybody was invested in it. And even today, the senior leaders are invested in it. I mean, I've had a lot of discussions with the senior leaders who were there and retired from there, and they bear some of the responsibility for this, of putting this in the situation, not the young men and women out there. And by the way, before I go any further, I want to say thank you to the young men and women who served in Afghanistan for 20 years and those young troopers who are on the ground as we speak today that are fighting to hold what they've got right there. They're great American heroes. But I mean, this is one of those, he needs to do some self-evaluation on this and look at this really hard and study it.
Do you think if you were to talk to these people, whoever was in charge 18 years ago making these decisions, and for the last 20 years, off the record, if you got them in a totally off the record conversation, do you think they would have a little bit of humility or regret or guilt as to what they did, or are they so firmly invested still that, or deluded or whatever, you don't even think they'd be humble now?
No, I don't, Mike. I think that, frankly, I think they are so embedded in what happened there and their belief in the righteousness of what they did. I think they can't sit back and look at it. I really believe that. I think we have, for the most part, we created a generation of people so focused in on Afghanistan and that part of the world that we forget to look the other way. Look, here's a great example. I mean, I can make it the example in 30 seconds. The Russians and the Chinese both have hypersonic missile batteries active today. We still don't, in the American military, have an active hypersonic weapon. Why? Because we weren't focused in on stuff like that. And we were looking at something internal to a country like Afghanistan and worried about terrorism when everybody else was looking at something different. And I just think the leadership needs to look at that. We just need to look at the leadership that we had and frankly, probably remove a lot.
I want to talk about your time in the White House during President Trump and Mike Pence's time. They also wanted to get out of Afghanistan. And it's interesting, we got to find some nuance here, because I don't necessarily criticize Biden for wanting to leave Afghanistan. And I'm curious your take on maybe what size footprint we should keep there or should have kept there forever, like we do in Germany and Japan today, or just totally get out. So we can have that. It's a really interesting conversation. It's the way that it all went down, which is terrible. How was Trump's plan different than Biden's execution? And did Trump just want to kick the can down the road forever too? What was his deal?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mike. And I was lucky. I spent 1,461 days in the White House, kind of saw it all. His plan was conditions-based. And we worked at well over 18 months ago. We sat down with Pompeo and we sat down with the whole team and we said, okay, as we go through these gates or conditions, we're going to withdraw troops as we go down there. The last gate or condition we had was we were going to hold 2,500 troops with air power in Afghanistan until they had successful intra-Afghan peace talks between the Taliban and Ghani of the government to create a basically reconciliation government. Here's the big difference too. President Trump picked up the phone and called Mullah Baradar, who was the chief negotiator for the Taliban, not once but twice in the Oval Office. And he was very clear in Trumpian terms of what would happen if he screwed around with the United States, or what happened or he didn't fulfill it. And he got it.
What did he say?
I'm sorry?
What did he say?
He basically said, again, in Trumpian terms, that if Baradar harmed an American or something went bad, that he knew where he lived, he knew where his family lived, he knew where all his buddies lived, and we were coming to get him. And we proved that with Soleimani, and we proved that with Baghdadi, and he got it. I mean, he really did get it. Baradar owed us a little bit, too. We got Baradar out of a Pakistani jail to make sure he could do the negotiations for the Taliban going forward. But the president was really quite clear. And that's your big difference. I know that Biden's never talked to Baradar. He made it clear to the Taliban, this is what's going to happen. He made it clear to Ghani as well, this is what's going to happen. But we were going to hold until that last condition was met, and then we'd have a reconciliation government going forward. I don't know what would happen, Mike, what would happen with a reconciliation government, but that was the whole intent behind it. It sure would have been a lot different than the Taliban sitting in our embassy right now or the presidential palace. I know that.
Trump got criticized for talking to the Taliban. I remember that, for meeting with them, meeting with some of them.
Yeah, Mike, and here's what gets me. There was a lot of criticism. Trump actually said, let's bring him back to Camp David. People fell on the floor when he said that, but he said, wait a second. I told people, wait a second. Camp David Accords, in the late 1900s, where we brought back Sadat and Menachem Begin from Israel and Egypt and spent 12 days at Camp David and pounded out a peace agreement. That's what the president was looking at. And you can't. So why would you criticize or try to get for peace there? Everybody said, well, you can't bring him back. I think he had it right. I think we should have brought him back, put him on the ground and said, we're going to feed you, cold pizza and warm beer until you determine to go forward.
Is there any strategic reason for us to have stayed there, like to help our combat readiness in that part of the world, or is there none of that even?
No, I don't. Mike, I don't believe we should have stayed there. I think you can fight over the horizon. We have proven that. Look, if people don't believe us and our ability to fight over the horizon, then pick up the phone and call Soleimani. Oh, that's right, he's dead. Pick up the phone and call Baghdadi. Oh, that's right, he's dead. We can fight over the horizon very, very well. What we needed to do was to focus to the left and right, Russia and China, because they both create an existential threat for America. We can handle terrorism and from a distance. And people didn't look at it that way. They thought that was the most important thing we were doing. Is it critical? Yeah. Is it important? Yeah. But we can do better than that. We're much better military than that.
China or Afghanistan is going to become a Chinese colony basically now, right? They've already almost recognized them as legitimate government. They're just about to. And there's plenty of resources there, et cetera. And they're going to become deeply embedded in Afghan life, no?
Well, they might do that, but kind of my attitude, and I probably would have said the same thing to Vice President Trump. Let him recognize Afghanistan, and we'll recognize Taiwan. I said, you want to play that game? We can play that game. We're better than you are. We're bigger than you are. We're tougher than you are, and we can play that game a lot better than you.
What do you understand the threat is of people there today? And that can be for Americans. Like, what's the situation, as you know, today of Americans on the ground? And then also our Afghan friends, the translators, et cetera, that are desperately trying to get out.
Yeah, that's one of the great tragedies. I mean, we have left them in the lurch. We have left them there. There are probably people in hiding right now. And we left a lot of people that served with us there in Afghanistan. And that's one of the great tragedies. I think the situation is really untenable for them and for others out there. I mean, you're now fighting a rearguard action. You can see the pictures out there. I mean, I saw a picture of an American C-17 taking off today with Afghans hanging onto it, then falling off the C-17, and it was going up. I mean, Tony Blinken can talk about a Saigon moment. I mean, Saigon was nothing compared to this. That picture will stay for generations of an American C-17 taking off with Afghans on it, holding on for dear life, and then they fall off. I mean, this is well beyond a Saigon story.
Could the Afghan military have fought for themselves? I've heard this criticism before that, we trained them and then we gave them all the whatever, and then they just gave up. They quit. They folded. What's the point? And I've seen videos, and I don't even know the context, but like we're trying to teach them how to do jumping jacks, and these Afghans can't. Right? So, is it even possible? Would it have been possible or no?
Well, sure it would. I mean, here's what you're talking about. I said, okay, you're talking about 18 years of nation building, 18 years of our support there. That means taking somebody from the womb, and 18 years later, they're an Afghan soldier. You mean we couldn't get this one right? You mean we couldn't have trained them the way we wanted to train them to fight and give them the will and determination to do it? Those are some of the questions we need to ask. If putting this on the Afghan soldier is terrible. It's despicable.
That's how they're spinning it. That's how the White House is going to spin it.
Well, it might be, but it's terrible. How can you say that when we were the ones responsible for training them? We were the ones responsible for making sure they had it right. We were the ones who developed their leadership. After 18 years, we're going to say it was the fault of the Afghan military. I think we need to do some self-reflection. That's what I said earlier. How the heck did we get here? I mean, we've created militaries after 18 years that are a lot better than that. I mean, look at Germany, look at Korea, look everywhere.
30 seconds, General. What's your message to Joe Biden, and what does he need to do now?
Well, my message is, you need to lead, and my fear is he won't do it, and he can't do it because it's a question of will and strength and internal fortitude. I just don't think he has it. I think Trump had it. I saw Trump do it. I know when he had to pull the trigger to do it. When he had to drop gloves, and using the hockey term, he'd drop gloves. I don't think he's got it, and I think we're just going to have to live with what we've got right now, which is unfortunate. It's the way it is.
General Trump was very mean on Twitter, though. Very mean, right? And just, unacceptably mean to Rosie O'Donnell and such. Amazing. Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, honor to talk to you, sir. Thank you for your service.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate you having me.
From the American First Policy Institute. All right. True story. Mike Slater. Spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders, let's end the show with a little bit of hope, shall we? Because we need it. We need to know our country. We need to know our history. We need to know who we are. We see all these other problems in our country, and we know with young people today are just so woefully ignorant of just the basics, like what the three branches of government are basics, let alone the Constitution and Declaration. We need to do what we can, short, medium, and long term, to get that wisdom. Knowledge first, perhaps. Knowledge and then wisdom back. All that being said, Charles Love is here. He's the executive director of Seeking Educational Excellence, host of The Charles Love Show. He's got a new book coming out, Race Crazy, Black Lives Matter 1619, and the Progressive Racism Movement. Charles Love, good to talk to you again, brother.
It is always great to talk to you, and I'm glad to be here to talk about hope.
Love that.
That's a
Love
good thing
it.
to say, right?
Hope through civics. It's so like, I don't even know what civics means anymore. Like, that's been kicked out of our schools so long ago, and then we call it social studies and all these other, I don't even know what they call it these days. What are civics?
Well, I think that it's so important. It's important anyway. We used to learn it in school. It's kind of like you said, blended with other things. It came pseudo-government with history, with this other thing, and it moves slower and slower away. And now with the debate that we have going on in education, we're learning more and more history, whether that's good and bad, and less about how our society works. So how can you be a great citizen if you don't know the basics of our society?
So what are you doing with the Coolidge Foundation?
Yeah, so the Coolidge Foundation and my organization, Seeking Educational Excellence, looked at this and said, well, what can we do to move the needle in a positive way? What can we do to help, like you say, kids gain knowledge? And we're doing a challenge for 6th graders through 10th graders. They register, they sign up, and they answer basic questions, like you said, the three branches of government, what certain amendments mean. How do you change it? Add an amendment. How does the bill become a law? And things of that nature. And if they do well, then they go to a further round, and we bring them out to D.C. They get to meet me and the chair of the Coolidge Foundation, New York Times bestselling author Amity Shlaes, and some other notables, and understand more about what's going on, and kind of bring an engagement and an interest in this, with the hopes that they'll push the from inside the school and inside the classroom, that the kids will push for more knowledge for civics.
Love it. How do people sign up and be a part of that?
They go to coolidgefoundation.org/debate and click on the link that says Coolidge Citizenship Challenge.
What do you want a student to leave out of this challenge? Not just knowing, because it's one thing to know the three branches of government, but how do you want them to be different?
I want them to understand that there's nuances to what they hear in the media today, that there's things about this country that they need to know regardless of how they feel about them. And more importantly, we hear a lot of things about the woke and these people who are social justice warriors. But there's a basic understanding for them, too. If you want redress, if you want to say the government's doing something wrong and you want to fix it, how do you even fix anything if you don't know the way the system works? If you don't know what is wrong, you don't know the avenues to make change. So even for those people, this is paramount. And I think that a lot of this has been lost. And you hear them scream about politicians not doing certain things, and we can all talk about that, but sometimes they're doing exactly what they're supposed to do, and we just don't know that that's what their role is. Sometimes they're overstepping their role. We need to know that as well. And this is building a foundational block for them to learn and hopefully be interested enough to learn more.
Great point. We got 45 seconds. Let's give me some hope here, Charles. I'm putting you quite a task here. We got COVID, we got critical race theory, we got now Afghanistan failures, China, blah, blah, blah. We go on forever. I'm not in the best mood at this moment, Charles. So you got 30 seconds to put me in a good mood now.
Well, I'm going to put you in a better mood. I don't know about good. What I will say is that people like you and I, people who are on the front lines talking about this stuff, it's important, no doubt. But we have to understand that we only have so much reach. And most of us, no matter how many people you think on Twitter, they have all these millions of followers, we have a very small circle of influence. We need to do what we can positively to focus, to move the needle and get people to understand the positive things. But most people aren't really listening to that. So the average American is just trying to put food on the table, trying to live their life, trying to raise their kids, and they're not paying attention to this noise. So that could be good or bad. They may not be hearing my voice or yours, which could be bad, but then they're also not hearing about all this wokeness we're talking about. So some of them are just, don't think because you hear a large number of people shouting about something that most Americans believe this stuff. I don't think they do.
Yeah, that's right. There's still a lot of people in your circles who are can be influenced for the best. I like it. Charles Love, the Charles Love Show in Chicago. And what's the website one more time to sign up for the challenge?
CoolidgeFoundation.org/debate.
Beautiful. Charles Love, we'll talk again, brother. Appreciate you.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Have a great day, man. We'll hear from Biden later today. We'll talk much more about Afghanistan tomorrow, that's for sure. True story. Spread the word.